Satisfaction. When I think about satisfaction, I I think about when I was a kid, one of the most satisfying things I remember doing was climbing this super tall cedar tree. And I'd climb up there quite as far as I could and still be comfortable sitting in the branches. And then I would open up a book and I would sit up there for hours and read.
Wow.
Nobody knew where I was. I was hiding up in the tree reading. And it was very satisfying.
It sounds like it. Did you hear people calling you and you didn't answer? Was it that like much of a like a rebellion, or was it just until somebody called
No,
you?
I mean, it
Mm.
did happen from time to time. I won't lie. It did happen like that way a few times, but
You can lie
mostly
to
it
me.
was
It's
just
okay.
like, we were sent out the door as youngsters and said, go play
Right.
and have fun and,
Yeah. Come
hear the
back for
bell
dinner.
ring, come back for dinner. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I think
What
if
a
my
different world.
mom knew that I was climbing so high up in the tree, she probably would have had a panic attack and made me never do it again. So I
Right.
was very quiet about it for that reason,
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
able to hide, sneak off, and have my own like private space. It was just mine. Nobody knew I was there or doing that.
Nice.
It was awesome. Yeah, very
Nice.
satisfying.
Yeah. Wow. I'm trying to think what else. So in my childhood, that would be the 2 weeks that we went camping every year. My mom didn't go. And so I would say I probably never relaxed enough to feel satisfied as a kid other than those 2 weeks. And I do remember those 2 weeks feeling that would be an excellent word, satisfaction. Sleep as long as you want. I had a separate tent that my two younger brothers slept in the trailer with my dad, and I had my own tent. And so I was literally that space that you're describing. I could lay there and read late into the night with my flashlight if I wanted, early in the morning, or I could get up early and get the fire going again. With the kind of the standard policy was, it wasn't a rule, it was just a practice that whoever got up first blew on the embers from the previous night on the camp, kept the campfire going all day long, and get that kind of going up again, and then head off down to the lake and in the fog, the early morning, the fog lifting from the lake and the loons flying overhead. You couldn't see them, you could just hear them. And take the boat out on the lake. Like I could do anything I wanted. I could do like there were no rules, none. It was such a contrast because when my mom, there were spoken rules, a
Yeah,
lot of those, and there were a lot of unspoken rules,
unspoken
and then there
rule.
were like protect cover your ass rules, like. And but with my dad, no rules at all. So satisfaction is probably the best word for that entire experience. I've always thought that that was a spiritual experience. It was a healing experience. It was a encouraging and supportive experience. I got to explore the world and chop wood and start fires and do stuff that other kids my age weren't doing, especially girls. Didn't do or didn't know how to
Right.
do or couldn't do, weren't allowed to do. And so, but satisfaction really just kind of wraps that whole thing up in a nice tidy little
Yeah.
bow. I like that.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I was thinking about this word satisfaction, and I realized that there were lots of things in my childhood that were very satisfying, like riding my bike, racing with my bicycle was just awesome. But there was then a time where I don't know as if I felt a whole lot of satisfaction in my life.
Mm,
It's, I would say, maybe somewhere between 15, 16 to at least 25 to 30. No, not much satisfaction. There were little tiny, tiny little moments where I could escape. And because I was living in Colorado, I'd go up into the mountains um, and we would just, there was a little group of us that we're all from out of state. We're all going to art school, and we would escape out into the mountains, and we'd take a 6-pack of beer with us, and we would just sit there on top of a cliff and just have a ball. And those were the only like real moments of satisfaction I can remember when I was younger. And really in my 30s, then I remember feeling there were times where there was no satisfaction at all. I didn't like relate to the word. I really didn't even understand the concept of being satisfied. I
right.
think at that point in my life, or I might have like pursued it more, but I was just falling into this like, oh, well, this is what life is about. It's like,
Right.
constant struggle, and you're always trying, and you're always halfway behind everything or everybody else. And, you know,
Yeah.
so It was really much later before I started like I remember I was 39 years old and I said to myself, there's no way I'm going to move into the next decade of my life like this.
Ah,
And in that
pretty clear
moment,
line in the sand.
yes, it was a
Yeah.
choice point, right? And I hit that point and I'm like, this is not going, I'm not taking this with me. And I let go. And I
Mm.
tried to find more satisfaction in my life, but I still hadn't come across the concept of seeking your joy in every moment. It was like, oh well, that's not that wasn't even part of the deal yet. It was like, you can't do that. you
Right.
know
Right.
I mean,
Right.
even a part of me even thought that this is just what life is this constant struggle from one struggle to the next is what you're doing. You're moving from one struggle to the next. And it really wasn't until I hit 49 and I said, I am not taking this into the next decade of my life,
Good for
when I
you.
started to realize that I deserved to at least be satisfied with what I was doing
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to eliminate things out of my life that didn't make me feel that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good for you. That's great.
It's quite a process. I
Yeah.
suppose you just hit a point and one day was this way and the next day was that way.
Well, for me, it was really releasing the fear. I don't think you can feel, I don't know of any way that I could feel satisfied if I'm also feeling fear.
Yeah.
So satisfaction is too close to love and joy, right? It's
Yeah.
not quite all the way up there, but it's a good solid base feeling, like a place to live, and then to pop up into real joy and ecstasy and giddiness and everything. But it's a really good solid foundation. But there can't be any fear, I don't think. And my childhood and my young adulthood was all full of fear. And when I think back on it, it's not that I was well, there was some function of actual physical fear. I remember I was seeing a therapist once. I was in a group therapy program, and I was struggling with whatever it was, and so I ended up seeing her privately a little bit too. And I remember her asking, I don't remember her name or what she looked like or anything. I remember one question. She said, "When does it feel like you're gonna die?" And I was 31, let's say 30 to 31. And I said, well, my parents are both still alive and my father. And she said, no, no, no. Well, not when do you think you're going to die? When do you feel like you're going to die? And nobody had ever asked me a question like that to distinguish between thinking and feeling, for one thing. And also
Oh,
to,
yeah.
that level of depth, of intimacy, of vulnerability, of
Right.
describing a feeling. So it took me a minute. So I, I kind of try to relax, and as best I could. I didn't know how to settle into my body or get into my heart or any of that stuff back then. I just settled in and I said, "Oh, any minute now." Very matter of factly. Yeah,
Wow.
oh yeah, yeah, I can tell. I feel like I'm going to die any minute now. It's like, really? Okay. So then we went on and talked. I don't remember the whole rest of the conversation. I don't remember, the rest of the therapy or anything. I remember that one question. It really stuck with me. So when I'm feeling any fear, I really don't think I can feel even as high as satisfaction. Fear is such a low vibration
It is.
experience, and it dismantles all of the connection to source, right? It just blows us out of the water, kind of. So
Mhm.
for me, it's been a lifelong process: therapy, 12-step groups, looking for religion. I went to friends meetings. I went to some Buddhist things. I tried to learn meditation. It was all about, looking back on it, I didn't know that then, but looking back on it, I can see it was all a process of letting go of fear. And then that final process, that line for me 10 years ago was the final part of it, and finding the faith, the trust, to be able to take Abraham at their word, for example, to really trust, came from the resonance that I felt with their message. Like when like that very first month, I was already crying a lot. I was deeply grieving the death of my partner, but I also cried a lot with Abraham, because when they said things like, "You came here eagerly," I just burst into tears the first time I heard them say that, and I sobbed for like 3 hours. I came here eagerly. Are you kidding me? At 55 years old, I finally figure out that I came here eagerly. That changes. It was a game changer for me.
Yeah, yeah, it would
It,
be.
and I just really don't believe that satisfaction would have ever been possible without that final awakening. I think I was getting closer and closer, but I still was
Right,
so far away from it. Like
right.
satisfaction it's beautiful. It's everything. It's
It
so
is.
peaceful.
And there, I think we do go through these stages of thinking that we are there. But when you look back at the childhood thing, like being up in the tree, and how I don't know, it's like a sense of like total freedom, just like you being in the woods with your dad, sense
Yeah.
of total freedom. And it's like it, not from tyranny or anything like that. It's more than that. It's
Yeah.
this deep, deep sense that everything is fine in the world, and what you're doing is exactly what you should be doing, and feeling the way that you should be feeling. And
Kind
somehow
of
or another,
describing freedom from fear.
yes, yes, that's why because what you were describing is exactly the feeling. And so when I think about the 20s and 30s, yes, there were moments when you could get a glimpse of that. I think if you don't get glimpses of it, you would be in real trouble, real emotional struggle if you're not getting any glimpses of it.
Mm.
But you think you're satisfied when these things happen like that in your life, and then you kind of comprehend differently once you understand, no, satisfaction means that sense that you had when you were a child. No fear, doing exactly what you want to do, enjoying the moment
Taking
that you're
great
living
pleasure
in.
from. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a whole nother like layer to this whole idea of being satisfied.
Yeah.
And I don't think that if you're still living, and I definitely was in this place where there was a lot of fear and a lot of struggle, and all the other things that go along with that. There's anger, there's guilt, there's shame. All of those emotions hold you at that lower vibration. And even when you do think you're having a day of satisfaction, you're not even close to really knowing satisfaction,
Mm.
because you're just too low on the scale, vibrational scale. So,
Do you think vibration gets deeper and higher? Like, is there a range? Like, you can be kind of satisfied on the low end or satisfied on the high end, and it's a different experience?
it's a totally different experience. I think I thought at that time that I was having moments of satisfaction, but after our discussion, I'm realizing that was still part of an illusion. It was
Mm.
an illusion, but it was still good to have those glimpses that there were better days, that there were better feelings to be feeling.
Mm.
And if you get those glimpses and you strive to reach for more of that, then you just do raise your vibration, and then you do
Right.
find that true satisfaction where, every day I wake up, and I won't say there's never fear. There are moments where it creeps up on you and you're like, oh, there you are again. But I know better now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, engage with you today. And there are times when I still hit that like little roadblock where you're like, oh, well, this isn't very satisfying feeling. And you're reminded then to
Right.
seek out those pleasurable things. And and satisfaction is only half the story, because there's still a whole other layers beyond that, which I did have a stretch of time. It was less than a year, but more than 6 months worth of time where I was waking up and just blissed out, like just
No.
in total bliss. And then you're seeing satisfaction from the other side, and
Mm.
you're like realizing that satisfaction is like the balance between the lower vibrations and the higher vibrations. You're like, well, at least if I can be at satisfaction,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm doing better than I have ever in my life.
Yeah, yeah. That's an interesting point. That's kind of like the pivot point, because Oprah says a lot, if you keep doing such and such, you'll never find it to be satisfying. Like they used satisfaction as a definitive point, kind of like what you're saying. Like instead of saying it'll feel awful, you'll feel horrible, like they don't even go there. They just say it won't be satisfying. So anything below this point is not
Not
satisfying. Everything
satisfied.
above this point is satisfying. Even if you're
Right,
blissed out of your gourd, you're also satisfied, right? Like there is. It's kind of like a pivot point right there. Pretty
right.
cool. Pretty cool.
And
I,
I just want to say too that, for anybody who's listening, it's not like you're not doomed if you're below satisfaction,
no,
because
not at all.
I've been below. I've been below, and now I'm at least satisfied or higher, and it's a journey. It's just know that there is another side.
Yeah. Well, and also for me, if I'm anybody or when I look back on myself and I was less than satisfied, I was somewhere beneath satisfaction, I wouldn't necessarily call that so much an illusion as I'm looking at satisfaction from down there. I would call it a mix. So, and this is post-transformation language, obviously. I wouldn't have thought that
Right.
then. I couldn't discern a mix because I couldn't discern anything. But from here, where I can look back or even look at myself right now and discern, wow, I've got a mix going on. Part of it's satisfied and part of it's not. Part of it's really full of anticipation and hope and exploration and curiosity, and part of it's full of a little bit of dread or a little bit of embarrassment or whatever it is, anything that's below that satisfaction level. And so in that mix, I'm just being human. We're human. We walk around with mixes all the time. We never said, I'm going to come here and I'm going to hold one single vibration purely and all unto itself. How boring would that be, right?
Yeah.
So we're constantly exploring the mix. We're also constantly experiencing the mix. We're
Right.
expressing the mix of everything that's going on around us. We're on the physical plane. It's full of contrast and resistance, and so that mix identifies us as human. I don't know if humans are the only ones that maintain a mixed vibration, but I dare say we might, because we're the only
We
ones
might
running
be.
around having fun and overthinking at the same time. you know,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yes.
how do we do that? I don't even know how we do that, but we do it. They say we
Yeah.
can't truly multitask, but we can sure mix.
I like to tell some of my clients, I like to explain to them about a vibrational set point. So, like if you're satisfied, you still have highs and lows,
Yeah.
but your vibrational set point is satisfied.
Yeah.
And if you are at a lower vibrational set point, your highs, you're still having highs and lows, and your
Sure.
highs, you might actually maybe hit satisfied a few times, like just for a few minutes.
Yeah.
So those glimpses are like the hope that you were talking about, right? That's
Right.
the hope, and
Yeah.
and that's the mix. Like we're always having ups and downs, and we have.
Yeah.
I don't care
Yeah.
how good you get at this game of life, you're still going to have moments where you dip down and moments where you're higher than satisfied.
Absolutely. If you think about our humor, I mean, it's really what makes us human. It's one of the things. I
Yeah.
guess there are a lot of things that make us human as opposed to some other animal. But you know, I saw the light at the end of the tunnel, but it turned out to be a train. Like there's that mix, right? It's like it was a great it's such a mix. It's like hope and killed at the same time. Hope and pain.
Yeah.
Pleasure and despair, or whatever. It's the mix. It's
Yeah. It could go
yeah.
the other way too. It could be the the pinhole of light at the bottom of the pit. That pit of despair actually has a hole. It's not, it's a tunnel. It's a tunnel. I thought it was a pit. There's always a mix.
Yeah, there's always a mix.
There is something to be said though about hitting that point of being satisfied most days where
Yeah.
you don't return to the pit of despair anymore.
Right.
Because
Right,
it's
right,
too low. It's much,
but
much
that's a skill.
dip.
That's a skill to be developed and
Yes.
practiced and honed over time, and it keeps getting better and better and better. Like I'm not nearly as skilled as I'm going to be a year from now, Lord willing, and the
Yes.
river doesn't rise. But the that satisfaction, I'm appreciating very much you pointing it out as kind of like the pivot point that you can rest there. Like in the stock market, they have floors, you know, where a stock market price will go, and but it'll rarely go below that. It's like you were saying, a set point, right? So if you
Yeah,
have a set point of satisfaction, you're rarely really going to go very far below it. You're gonna be, probably, if you have a good strong set point of satisfaction, you're going to be doing your range of motion pretty much above satisfaction. It's going to take something exceptional to, you know, and you won't stay there long if you go down.
right.
And so you have all, you know, this open sky ahead of you, above you, to explore and to enjoy.